Seeing as how I've harped on the idea of out-of-body experience being a key ingredient to spirituality, I thought that I'd address out-of-body experience today. Except for in the last week, I've decided to completely change my mind. Out-of-body experience is not important at all. I'm kidding. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. Out-of-body experience is incredibly important, as you know, because I harp on it all the time. It's important in the spiritual path, I think, as meditation. It's something we could talk about all day long, but really it's something that you have to experience for yourself. And as I've said, the energy in the universe is primed for it at this time as we go through this energetic shift where the dimensions are thinning in terms of their separation. All matter in the physical reality that we call reality is energy. It's only the density of that vibration which really obscures us from this understanding. It was an intentional decision for it to be that way, obviously, because the collective expansion is being served so much by the perspectives that creates within the universe. We exist on, in, and of multiple dimensions simultaneously, so it's really important when we're talking about out-of-body experience to get rid of our notion of distance, here or there. Physical objects have no attribute that's separate from the observer. I'm going to go into that separately for this conversation, but we exist on these multiple dimensions simultaneously. What separates these dimensions? The frequency and density of the energy of each dimension. Frequency is an expression. So each dimension is a different expression of universal energy. To experience a specific dimension, we must change our own frequency to match the corresponding dimension. You could think of this like a radio dial. If you're going to think of this like a radio dial, the way that you receive the radio in the morning, let's say you want to tune into 98 FM, is to tune your dial to that channel and then receive what's being broadcast on that channel. And how does one tune one's own frequency? How does one tune the dial, so to speak? With thought. All energy in this universe is molded and directed by thought. Thought itself is a vibration. It's the most powerful vibration within this universe. Thoughts hold different vibrations, and so different thoughts correspond to different dimensions. Physical objects have absolutely no attributes separate of the observer, which in his observation is creating their form, like I mentioned earlier. Physical matter is not the center of the universe. The further out of body that you explore, you will see this in varying degrees of truth. It's been sort of a Newtonian model and human model, frankly, that physicality is the center of the universe, but really it is the furthest extension and expression and projection of non-physical energy. Because of this, we could see that thought and focus of thought is not only what's creating these different dimensions, it's also your vehicle of travel through the different dimensions. All dimensions are thought responsive. Because consciousness creates the reality of all dimensions, in the physical there's like a time delay, I think you could say, in terms of how you perceive thought and then manifestation. This is not the case in other dimensions. So most dimensions are immediately thought responsive. That means once you get out of the body, if you think India, you're there. It's that fast. The brain is like a biological interface between the physical and the non-physical. It's a tool a lot like a computer. It's not you, and it's not what it is that thinks. It's what is translating thought to the rest of the body. Your brain interprets your out-of-body experiences based on its current concepts and images. This is why, when you're out of body, the forms that you encounter are less important than what those forms represent. The same goes for dreams, which is essentially uncontrolled and often unconscious out-of-body experience. I'll explain why this is. As you go to sleep, your consciousness pulls back from the physical, back through all the levels and all the dimensions, to what we could call the ultimate dimension. Some people like to put a label like the 11th or 12th or 13th dimension on this. And as it pulls back through that, you pass through thought form, which would be the 4th and 5th dimensions right outside the physical dimension. And that is where the representations of all of your thoughts exist. So you will pull back out through that, so you'll experience it in split seconds. Same when it comes to dreaming. When you come out of a dream, back to reality, the dream is being downloaded in split seconds as you pass through the thought form, fourth and fifth dimension of reality. And those energy forms, thought forms, which you are experiencing traveling through, are downloaded in split seconds, and then your brain then assigns images and representations of what those thought forms are. So a good example is, I'll just use a personal example. For a long time, I was really, really afraid of whales. And I couldn't really figure out why that was until I went out of body and I had this experience where I asked myself to show me the representation of my fears. And I was instantly transported to this aquarium where I was in the water with this whale who kept ramming against the side of the pool it was enclosed in. And I had a thought form. I asked for understanding, which is, yet again, that's a good way that you can direct your out-of-body experiences by asking for things in terms of intention. So I said, I now experience understanding as to what I'm looking at. And this thought form then, a spirit guide basically, came up behind me and explained that what I had created in my mind as the symbolic representation of my shadow side, all those things that I was running away from my childhood, it turned out, was a whale. So the whale itself, which I had run into in out of body, was the representation of my childhood fears that had amassed and that I was avoiding. And the size, you could imagine, a whale is very huge in size, had related to just how big my mind thought all of that was. Okay, all kinds of factors influence your ability to have an out-of-body experience, such as fears, intentions, self-concepts, your beliefs about out-of-body experience, your religious beliefs, and your expectations. Your firm intention, your commitment, your openness, and practice, coupled with shifting your thoughts to reflect the most beneficial beliefs relative to out-of-body experience, is really the key to doing this successfully. How do you induce an out-of-body experience? Some like to take advantage of that time period right before you're exiting your body into dream state at night. In my experience, the window of opportunity is incredibly small, and so for people who are beginning, it's better to pick a time when you're not going to transition into sleep really quick, when you're not tired, and instead when you can focus without being disturbed into a very deep state of stillness, a lot like meditation. I tend to choose early morning quite a bit. So first we're going to talk about the vibrational stage of an out-of-body experience. In general, people agree that there are 4 basic stages to an out-of-body experience. The first is called the vibrational stage. The second is called the separation stage. The third is called the exploration stage. And then the fourth is called either the re-entry or the returning phase. So first, the vibrational stage. You want to focus on your breathing, a lot like you do in meditation. Just keep drawing your mind as it wanders off to different thoughts back to the breath. You want to just watch yourself breathe in and breathe out. For those of you whose thoughts are very pervasive, it may help you to visualize a sky and watch your thoughts against the sky like clouds. So as the thought comes up, you let it just keep going by you like a cloud drifting in the sky. Gradually, there will be less and less of them. Thereby, the spaces between clouds is going to become more and more, meaning that your mind is reaching a state of stillness. Once the space between the clouds is mostly all that there is, you want to set your intention, such as, I am consciously aware during the entire out-of-body experience. I am now out of body. So you want to repeat this almost like a mantra. You want to pick something that you feel yourself emotionally believing. So for all of us, these mantras and these intentions or affirmations are going to be very individual. And then you want to watch for the feeling of heaviness or numbness or tingling or buzzing or internal movement. Like some people will feel like they're a top spinning within their own body. This is the vibrational stage. So you want to stay calm and you want to visualize or focus on that sensation. So you may start feeling it in your extremities, like your fingers and your toes. What you want to do is calm your emotional state and really accept that feeling. You want to visualize it spreading to engulf your entire body and letting go and surrendering to it. And from that point, the first few times you do this, most likely that is where you're going to get to. You'll be in the vibrational stage within your body. The next stage after that is the separation stage. Once you've achieved that feeling of the vibrational stage spreading throughout your entire body, you want to pick a thought of somewhere very familiar to you, something you can visualize very, very accurately, and you want to visualize yourself moving to this location or object. For some people, this means visualizing floating to the ceiling. That's really easy if you are already having floating sensations, or rolling up out of bed, or sitting up and walking over to an object in another room. There's no wrong way to do this, I should add. What you want to really focus on is keeping your mind away from the body, because like I explained before, energy is thought responsive, meaning if you think of your body, you're most likely going to be sucked back in. It's sort of precious, but in the beginning of out-of-body experience, it's almost like watching a baby animal get up and learn how to walk. The first 20 times, they get somewhat out and then they fall back in. They get somewhat out and then they fall back in. And it's this progressive training yourself to have more control out of the body and more control of not snapping back into your physical expression. So keep your mind directed away from the body. Now you want to create another intention, like I now separate, or I now move to the door. You can also ask for assistance from your guide to help you separate. There are hundreds of techniques that detail this process that I have now explained to you. So what I'm giving you today is just the sort of fastest, most abridged version of how to go about getting out of body, the one I think is most successful for beginners. You will feel yourself most likely floating or some sort of movement, and it takes some time for you to train yourself to not panic when you feel that movement, because the movement can be extremely intense sometimes, and to just let yourself go with it. You may also realize that your sounds in your environment and your sensations of your immediate physical environment are diminishing. And now we've arrived at the exploration phase. This is really the heart of the out-of-body experience. You may, when you are in the exploration phase, see this thing which we have called the silver cord. It's like a glittery light spiderweb or filament that is your mind perceiving the connection between your physical body and your thought form body. Most likely your thought form body, that which you experience in the lower dimensions, right outside the physical dimension, are going to be sort of energy duplicates of your physical self. They're the energetic concept you have of you in this life. This duplicate is really why outside of this dimension, the fourth and fifth dimensions, though it will seem like a blueprint, there are certain differences because it's the concept you have of your physical reality, not the way that the physical reality actually is. So your concept of the physical reality of the blanket and the physical reality may be a different color than it is in the fourth and fifth dimension. So you'll notice subtle differences. It's just because what you're experiencing, even the experience of your body in the fourth dimension, is your concept of your body. So the silver cord is really what your mind is assigning an image to in terms of your connection between the subtle etheric body and your physical body. You'll see it quite often. You'll see it even when you experience other people in the fourth dimension. I think it's quite beautiful. It's a lot like seeing an umbilical cord for the first time. You're kind of unprepared for how beautiful the colors and textures and translucence of it is. So decide what you wish to experience at this point and visualize that. So you can do this maybe by saying, I now experience the living room. You'll potentially have the sensation now, again, of seriously intense movement. The trick is staying calm and an attitude of trust, not only for yourself, but the totality of the universe, in carrying out your request immediately. There's no limit to this stage of an OBE. Once your explorations have satisfied what you were looking for, you're ready for the returning phase. A lot of times this is not really a conscious thing. It's almost like your energy self, your true eternal higher self, decides when the out-of-body experience is done. But if not, you can focus back on the body, or else if you get into the much higher dimensions, you can set the intention to return to physical experience. Just say that I now return to physical experience. And after a while, this will be a sensation which is not super jarring. But in the first, I'd say potentially year for most people, that experience of coming back to the body is quite jarring. You'll feel potentially like you're falling straight into yourself. It's a real jolt because the frequency at which you are shifting is so quick that your body hasn't really learned to land the plane. Sorry. Okay. In my opinion, the most difficult part of an OBE for people is to learn how to control one's thoughts and release resistance to fear to the degree that this doesn't happen automatically all the time. In my opinion, the most difficult part of an OBE for people is to learn how to control one's thoughts and to release resistance to the degree that it doesn't happen automatically. Like I was explaining before, it's quite common when people are first experiencing OBEs to feel like you have almost no control over snapping back into the body. So now I guess we can talk about at this point the fact that there is no limit to what you can experience out of body. It's sort of laughable to say that there is one reason why you would want to do an out-of-body experience, because out-of-body experience is really exploring the totality of our universe and our reality, the objective reality, the subjective reality, all of it in such an extreme first-person experience kind of way. You're transcending all of these dimensions. So you're transcending space, time, lifetimes, all of it. I'm sure that many of you sitting at home could see the benefits of doing that in terms of following a spiritual path, in terms of living a happy life, all of it. You've got the truth downloaded. As you can imagine, being unrestricted by the perception of space and time and physicality could greatly help your expansion throughout lifetimes, in this lifetime, all of it. So to give you an example of some intentions that you could experiment with. That being said, the sky is really the limit here. You could visit a deceased loved one, understand the dimensions of the universe. You could experience your eternal self, your true self. You could explore your own fears and limitations. You could learn how to decrease and increase your density with focus. You could experience the truth of the role that thoughts play in regard to reality. You could shapeshift. You could explore past lives. You could meet your spirit guides. You could communicate with animals. You could interact with other races and locations within this universe which we're living in currently. You could create entire alternate reality-scapes. This is really fun for those of you that like cartoons. We could understand how to resolve a current life conflict. You can do healing on others in these multiple dimensions. You can visit those who live at a distance from you. You could observe past events. You could find your pre-birth intention, which really brings you closer to your purpose in life. And basically the list goes on and on. So if you have any other questions regarding out-of-body experience, there are books written on this subject. There are people who devote their entire life to the idea and the concept of out-of-body experience. So you're going to find a lot of differing opinions and a lot of suggestions, and some of them will work for you and some of them won't. So go do your homework. And if you would like to offer me some more questions, I'd be glad to help you out. Have a fabulous week.